Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream. I am Jeff Freeman, and tonight I am joined by my Beyond Oak Island co-host, Tom Burns. Welcome, Tom.
Hello. Good evening, everyone.
So tonight, as you guys know, on these Thursday nights, we have been coming on to talk about the Beyond side of our Facebook group, Beyond Oak Island, and other stories or other shows and related to things that are beyond Oak Island. But in this particular night, we're going to be talking about last Tuesday night's episode of Beyond Oak Island, which was Pancho Villa's Plunder. Now, this was episode or season 2, episode number 7, and we've got some great guests for you here that I'm going to bring on in just a couple of minutes. But this was a really, really interesting show talking about Pancho Villa. Now, we got a little bit of a better look into his past during the show, but as you all know, there's so much of the, camera time and interviews and things that don't make it on the show that now we're going to be able to get some more in depth. And I got to tell you, I'm going to go ahead and bring these wonderful folks on. Let's go ahead and bring them on right now.
Bring them on. Let's go.
I'm really excited. We got a whole bunch of people here. All right. There is Cindy Medina. And let's see, we got John. We got 6 of us here tonight. Let me go around the room here real quick. Cindy Medina and Gypsy Jewels and John and David, welcome and thank you so much for being on tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
So, as you guys saw on the TV show, if you watched that episode, which you really should have, because it was a really good one with Maddie Blake and Marty going out to El Paso, Texas, they really got into looking for this Pancho Villa's Plunder and looking for some of his stash, and they went out to what they called the stash house. But Maddie has done a really good job of kind of bringing us into this. But what they do is they've reached out to some of the experts in the area. And one of those experts I'd like to get started with is Cindy Medina. Cindy, you've got a long list of accolades here. A genealogist, you're a historian, you're a writer, U.S. Pancho Foundation, I guess a Pancho Villa Foundation representative.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit more about you and all of that information, if you don't mind.
No, definitely. El Paso born Texan. I also consider myself a New Mexican since I'm right. El Paso is right in the intersection between 2 states, right? 2 countries.
Mm-hmm.
So I love my region, and I've always embraced all history, world history. But as I got older, I started getting more into my heritage and my genealogy and learning about Mexico and New Spain when it used to be called New Spain, and then it became Mexico. And and when you tie it into genealogy, you start learning about your ancestors and how they participated in different wars. And one of the latter wars was the Mexican Revolution. And it was a very gory war. Created one of the biggest migrations from Mexico into the United States. And so I really grew fond of what the vision of those past revolutionaries were. And I think God put me here at the right time. And so I met the Villa family. A lot of them, like Francisco Villacampa, Martin Villa, Francisco Villa, Agustin Villa, all these Lorenza Villa, all these great Villas. And they made me part of their family. And now I'm representing them in the U.S. with different events and so forth. And just talking about the history, it was positives and negatives on both sides. And so I'm happy to be here. And eventually I became the Pancho Villa a stash house representative here in El Paso, Texas, working with the owner of the establishment there.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And I know, and that's what I was saying about how, Maddie and Marty, especially Maddie, because he kind of helps put all this stuff together, but reaching out to the experts in the field. And you definitely being one, being the representative for the stash house and representative for the Pancho Villa family and the history of Pancho Villa. That's fantastic. We're going to get more information from you as we go along tonight, but I also want to introduce Gypsy Jewels. Gypsy, you've been on the show before. We know you're a metal detecting expert, and you working for Garrett or representing Garrett. So, tell us a little bit about your background too. I know some of the people have already seen it, but let's go through it again if you don't mind.
Sure. So I've been metal detecting now for 23 years, but treasure hunting all my life, kind of got started doing different types of treasure hunting, fossil hunting. Always loved history. I wasn't good at history in school, though, so, but
It was I would either.
you know, in school it was memorizing a bunch of dates, you know. But
Yeah.
I do, what was so neat is when they called me about this episode, is I do remember studying about Pancho Villa in school. And, you know, what's so fascinating about this is being able to go to this location where he actually was and talk to somebody like Cindy,
Yep.
and with this wealth of information about the history, the local history. So that's what I love about this show. You get to meet wonderful people like her that are connected to the local history and learn more about it. Stuff that you're not going to learn in school, that's for
Right.
sure.
Exactly. You're exactly right.
So, yeah, I was really lucky enough that they called me in to help with this. This was not one that of the treasure hunts that I was actually after. This one, they called me in and asked if I'd be interested in helping, and of course, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, sounds great. And so I brought my instruments, and I can't wait, you know, to hear more from John and David about the tech, you know, the technology that they brought in and how we worked together, and with Cindy's help, and just kind of learning the history along as we filmed that whole thing. And you know, we'll talk more about some of the stuff that didn't quite make the cut later, but anyway, that's a little bit about me. Yeah, I do have a YouTube channel, and been doing that for 5 years now, Zero Discrimination, and I get to travel all over with that. And hopefully, Cindy and I were discussing before I left El Paso about going into Mexico and looking for some stuff. She's got a lot of friends over there that metal detect too. So hey,
They remind.
Go ahead.
I mean,
Oh, you're gonna have to say that again. We lost it for a
say it
second.
again. We lost you for a second.
oh, I said it's funny because a couple of days ago they reminded me. They're like, "When is Gypsy coming?" My friend Miguel and my friend Blas are like, "We're ready for them whenever they're ready." So we got to talk about that.
We got to talk more about that for sure.
Yeah.
Make sure you take a camera with you.
Yes, take a camera because we want to see some of this. And let me know, because I'll bring you back on the show here and we'll go through some of this. Oh my goodness. I'll tell you what, both of you are such busy women. I tell you what, I know just talking with Gypsy over the course of the last couple of weeks since we had her on the show last time. I know you've been all over. You've been down in Florida hanging out with Gary Drayton, and you've been, I mean, just really cool stuff. So, and again, as I was saying with Maddie, then they go around and get all these experts in the area. And we got two more experts from, let's see, it was CSTI. You guys, John and David. And I know I had the pronunciation for your name, John, but I know I would botch it if I tried it right now. So I'm just going to say John and David. You guys brought out some of the tech like Gypsy did to the stash house. Go ahead, tell us a little bit. I don't know which one of you want to go first, but tell us a little bit about CSTI and what you guys do.
Yeah, CSTI is a geophysics surveying and geospatial company that does a lot of reality capture type of technology. We utilize LiDAR, geophysics, remote sensing, any of that technology that has to do with radio waves, electromagnetic impulses, and we just interpret it. Originally, we utilize this data for infrastructure mapping to be able to identify utilities, which are an important part of everyday life. Because the basis of why we got into it was not only for our background as a construction and engineering and surveying, but it's a life safety thing. We used it to find gas lines, electric lines. We wanted to keep people safe, and people don't realize that utilities are a very important part of the industry, and only because you wouldn't believe just how many billions of dollars they waste with undocumented utilities and unknowns, and people put things everywhere, and just how dangerous it could be when people are digging and and be able to blow themselves up or hurt them. So
Yep.
our goal is that we are a risk mitigation company by being able to provide services in order to kind of mitigate that a little bit. But also, we got into history and archaeology with this and live capture for a lot of different reasons, whether it was looking for in forensics, in archaeology, just kind of bridging the gap between technology and history, and also help creating information systems and also educating people about what this technology can or cannot do.
Right. Wow. That's fantastic. Now you're located in El Paso area, right?
That is correct. I'm based out of the El Paso office, and I'll let Dave talk about the other locations and some of the other things he does, which is really exciting.
Yeah, thank you, John. So yeah, my name's David Acosta. I'm actually in Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is on the southern part of the state. It's really only about a 45-minute drive over to El Paso, so we're fairly close. But I am a surveyor here in New Mexico, a licensed surveyor, and it's interesting how this work is relatable to even a survey that we do when it's a boundary survey, because it starts with a lot of research and talking with people, trying to gather as much information as you can. And then we go out to the field, we see what type of evidence that we could find. Sometimes there's a little bit of back and forth, a little trial and error for us to kind of dial in what it is that we're looking for.
Right.
So it's pretty cool how this is all tied, very relatable to what we do even on the survey side. And as John mentioned, we started out as doing surveying and construction staking, but we evolved into I guess enough people asked us if we were doing utility locating, that we finally said, you know what, I think we need to look into this. And it turned out to and not a lot of people are doing it, especially from the surveyor's point of view. So it's really been a good thing for us. And obviously being able to be a part of something like this show and being a part of history has been really amazing. And I know there's a lot of people that are related to Pancho Villa in some way or another, but actually my wife is as well. So
wow,
there's a little bit of personal
family connection,
attachment to this. Yeah. So, but it was a really, really fun experience to be a part of it and be able to display and show the technology that we have. Even though it was, unfortunately, the show only had so much time, so we weren't really able to show all of it.
Right.
But we do have a lot of great tools, and we've gained a lot of good experiences. Whether it was doing some GPR in an old cemetery, or looking for different things. So it's kind of helped us to be prepared for what we experienced over at the stash house.
Yeah. So we're gonna dig in a little bit as we go along in the show tonight. We're gonna dig in a little bit more depth on your equipment, of course, and how that stuff kind of works. But also, I think again, Tom's got some interesting questions about different things that you guys have done with that equipment. So
just as we go along, I mean, the show is 42 minutes long by the time they get it cut, edited it on the air, and they're filming a heck of a lot longer than that. So if you at any point in time during tonight's show think of something that you would think that, you know what, if I could add 5 minutes to that show, what would I include?
Right. So think
Feel
about
free to
that.
tell us.
Yeah, think about that a little bit. And we'll get back to that. And again, like I was saying earlier, that they reach out and bring in the experts, and all four of you are experts in your areas. And I don't think they could have brought a better team into this, quite honestly. Not only do you have the background and the research and the equipment, but you also have that personality that makes us want to know more. And that's what really brings to the table. I know talking with Gypsy before and Cindy, I've talked to you on the phone a couple of times or whatever. And I know that you have a wealth of knowledge to bring to the table. And also that personality, like I was saying, that we want to know more. You bring that with you, and that's just fantastic. And speaking of that and the history of Pancho Villa, and again, like Gypsy was saying about history, I in school I went through the history books and I'm learning dates and I'm learning names, but they don't really mean anything. So take us a little bit about, the show talked about the Mexican Revolution and things that were going on. and how Pancho Villa and some of the others were, brought into this. Take us to a beginning somewhere if you'd like, and kind of tell us a little bit how this all developed and got started.
With the Mexican Revolution, sure.
Yeah.
Around 1910, there was a need for Mexico to have a change. They had a president, Porfirio Diaz. They considered him a dictator just because he had been in presidency for many decades, but he tried to do good for the country. But at the same time, there was a lot of lack of, and they needed a change. They needed more rights. They needed better pay. So enough was enough. So they started having movements, and different people throughout the country started their little, you know, boycotts and so forth until it ignited in 1910 and caused one of the biggest battles in here on the other side of the border here in El Paso, Texas, and Ciudad Juarez in 1911, which with that battle won, and that's where Pancho Villa gained popularity as a young colonel, and they were able to overtake the current president of Mexico and put someone else that was going to look out for the people. And that should have been the end of the revolution, but it was not enough. You know, people wanted more. The U.S. interests were big, so they got involved in the Mexican Revolution, and so guns were being provided to revolutionaries. So it started getting bigger and bigger. So maybe that a war that could have lasted 1 or 2 or 3 years, perhaps, ended up lasting 10 years. A lot of revolutionaries were backstabbed, murdered by their own people, and presidents as well. A lot of Mexican presidents. There was one that that was was killed by was supported with a U.S. ambassador. So there was just a lot of interest. And it is what it is. It's history, and so taking it to El Paso, Texas, around that time in the mid 1900s, El Paso was the city where everyone wanted to be. The revolutionaries, because it was a safe haven for them. They could take a break from the revolution, stash money, and then go back to the revolution after they've gathered their thoughts. So the stash house, that's what it was for Pancho Villa and his brother Hipólito, a place where they can arrive, because George Benton was the owner of the house, and who was married to a woman that was Pancho Villa's brother's wife. And so it was a place where they can be there, stash money and everything, but they never thought that, their money would be confiscated. So when it got confiscated from the stash house, about $500,000 worth of jewelry, money, and plus jewelry and guns and all that, that was the precursor to the Columbus attack that happened the following year in 1916. And from there, we have the Persian expedition when they went looking for Villa. And due to all that, that's what actually helped the U.S. get better and perfected their own war tactics, especially when they went into World War I. So from something negative, something good happened, one way or the other for a little bit of everyone. And so the stash house has a lot. It's a precursor to a lot of things, the Pancho Villa stash house. So
is there more places? And now, they kind of mentioned it briefly on the show that there would be other places around the area where there may be stashes of, because you like Marty was saying when they rolled up in the car, well, we don't want to, they're not going to put it all in one place. So they're going to spread it around a little bit. So are there other places of interest where there might be other, not only, money or whatever, but also relics and other things that may be important to this whole history of Pancho Villa?
Yeah, there's many houses. He also lived for a short time, or stayed at a short time. I even had an event in December, very first historical event, of a house owned by a Greek man who was Pancho Villa's biggest supporter. And so there had never been a historical event there until I had one in December and one in January. So I was very happy to do that as well. Since the Pancho Villa stash house, I had the first binational event, and now I was able to have it at another house. So there's different houses like this in El Paso that, maybe there was some gold or some money and people found it, or they could still be stashed. These are old homes with old tunnels. A lot of these tunnels have been closed off. Who knows what's below? There's still a lot of, possibility in this area where all this stuff could be hidden. Is called Sunset Heights in El Paso, Texas. So a lot of possibilities. And I better start learning from Gypsy and all. I need to start, treasure hunting in some areas, and then you never know if I can get lucky, you know.
Yeah,
Well,
So,
Cindy and I definitely need to go on some adventures together and explore some of this because she's got the history background to lead us to the right locations. And then I've got the metal detectors, and we can call in John and David to help for those deeper targets and stuff. But I will say this, it's funny that you bring that up, Jeff and Tom, about other locations. So I was recently talking to, Garrett metal detectors. Now, a lot of it, Miss Garrett just passed away, by the way, last week, unfortunately. Charles Garrett, he's been gone for a while. He actually started the metal detecting company in his own garage. Interesting little piece of history there, which there's some fascinating history around that. It would make a neat little story. But getting to my point, I was talking to Von Garrett. He is the son of Charles Garrett, the owner or current part of the owner of Garrett Metal Detectors. And I was telling him about this episode that we were, I think we had either just filming or just finished filming it, or we were about to film it. And he told me that when he was a kid, that they were in New Mexico and they were filming this thing for Garrett Metal Detectors over in, not New Mexico, in Mexico. And they were filming this thing for Garrett Metal Detectors, and he got the pleasure of meeting Pancho Villa's wife.
Oh, really? Wow.
And what was so fascinating about that was she had him go over to the location in Mexico where she was staying at. Pancho Villa, of course, was gone at this point, because this is later, and got to metal detect part of that property. Well, she also disclosed to him a location in Texas where part of his treasure is. So I'm hoping to, I haven't contacted, I wanted to talk to Maddie Blake and the executive producer about that and see if we can't, there is a tricky part to it. I can't disclose that part
No
yet,
problem.
but if so, we can get the whole team back together. I would like to get the whole team back together and get Cindy, John, David, everybody. And hopefully this time, if they're finished filming The Curse of Oak Island, that we can get, both brothers there and find this. Because this is a really big lead coming straight from her.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, sure. So of all these different locations that you've identified, I know the one in El Paso was the first one that we say was actually checked out with using technology. Mm-hmm. Of these other sites, have a lot of them been checked with technology? None of them? Some of them? This
particular site, I doubt it's ever been checked because of the trickiness that I can't disclose right now.
No, that's fine.
But if we can get this one may require a big permit.
Nice.
But if we can get this, I think it would be great to get the team together. And of course, I'd have to talk to Von Garrett because he's the one with the inside information to get his permission. But I think we could make it happen for sure.
Wow.
And even if they didn't want to do a follow-up beyond, my thought is you could do a full documentary on Pancho Villa.
Yep.
This could make a whole mini series or something. There's a documentary. I think it would be fascinating.
Wow. What do you think, David? John, you guys in for that? You up for another challenge like that?
Oh, of course.
Well, definitely.
We're always up for a challenge.
Now that when they mentioned tunnels, that's where you guys and your technology would really come into play, right? We're looking for tunnels and open spaces and whatnot.
Yeah, I think the most important thing that we got to understand about using this type of technology, and I think a great example that independently with Gypsy Jewels, even new tool that she brought on the show, is we try to create redundancy in the information and the findings that we have, because we're always trying to rule out everything. And I've seen, I think Marty even says, well, you gotta rule it out. You got to dig it up. You got to check it. You got to put eyes on it, because it's a process. It's a process of not only tools, it's a process of being able to have a set of criteria in order to establish the records, to put it to the finds on the ground, and kind of make those interpretations in order to be able to come to an understanding that, hey, this is the best information. This is where we're going to dig. And like we always say, X marks the spot.
Yep.
Yeah, and let's not forget how much work digging a hole actually is. So, and I know, and you might have seen my shirt really sweaty in the show.
I think I have a picture of that, actually. So.
Yeah, and you know what? And I was proud of that sweat too. You know, so. But before we actually start to excavate something like that, it's always nice to double check, to verify, cross-reference with different tools before we actually begin that work. So they complement each other, us with our tools and what Gypsy has as well.
Yep.
You know, that is so true. It was so neat. And they ended up cutting a big part out of the show, is when David and John were running their equipment, and we did join, and I went back over it, the spot that we dug, and we had to cut through the cement. There was something under there. Our machines did not lie.
Right.
It's just not what we were looking for. So it got cut, and that's okay. We understand why it got cut. And there was another hit that both of us with our equipment got in a whole nother side building there. What was the building called over there, Cindy?
Oh, the soldiers' quarter.
The soldiers' quarters.
Mm-hmm.
We had both coordinate. We had found another hit inside there, and dug it. But it wasn't what we were looking for, and there was just not enough time when you're trying to film them digging this hole and through the cement, and also capture, what John and David and his team were doing with their equipment. And then Cindy and myself and Maddie were out back doing the metal detecting, and then over here while they're filming that, we have to be quiet while they're filming this, So there is a system there, and it was really interesting. So beforehand, they had asked me if they wanted to order some equipment, and I'd asked to order some probes. And you notice, I can't remember if it was you, John, or you, David, or who it was inside when y'all put the probe down in the hole that we had.
Yeah.
Okay, John. So I thought it was neat. There was another spot. We were talking about tunnels, remember? There was another spot that I probed way in the backyard, and Cindy and I, we had gotten, the owner of the property was going to move some of the big beams, but they had already filmed the drone spot and they didn't want to change it. So I had gotten another spot way back in the back, and I don't know if it was a tunnel. I don't know if it was a privy. I'm not sure what it was, but I put that probe down, and that probe just went whoom. And it was also went down so much that sand and dirt were falling in the hole from the probe.
There could be a void down there somewhere.
Exactly.
There definitely was a void at one time for sure. Whether it was a tunnel, a trench, I'm not sure. But I don't know if John and David had gotten their equipment over there. There was these big beams in the way that we couldn't get to. There was just still so much left untouched. It would be fun to get to go back to that location and this other location that I have that we could include in a second follow-up episode.
Yeah, it was a little tight in there to work, tight space, especially for some digging tools. And there's a really amazing wooden gate there at the front that was done by Rigo. He's a local there around the neighborhood. But it was tough too to not compromise any of that hard work. Not to mention this wood fence, probably, I don't know how many pounds it probably weighs, but probably enough to hurt somebody, obviously, if it was to fall over. So it was tough to compromise, some of that work, some of the house, but there was definitely some voids that we were seeing there, picking up and visually inspecting as well.
Wow.
Yeah, I have a pretty good example I can bring up on that area that she's talking about.
Oh, please. Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So I have what they call a tomography, which is basically looking how the radio waves behave in the ground, right? Whether they're bouncing off quickly, and it's coming back in terms of a colorized map. So
yeah, and that must take a lot of school to be able to understand and read those. I mean, they show them. We see that little picture of the wavy lines and whatnot. It's like I don't make any sense out of it. I'm like,
which way is up?
Yeah, which way is up? Yeah, thank you, Tom. Very good point. Yeah, which way is up?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is a lot like reading another language or something, and but it takes a lot of time and experience to understand it. And of course we like me and John, we like getting the best technology that's available to us to be able to do this type of work. So but it's cool when it all comes together.
Yeah. So the main building there is the stash house, correct? Is that right, Cindy?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes. And then the other one is you called that the I'm sorry,
the smaller building. That one right there, where you have your going over, that's the soldier's house. But the big one that's the big Pancho Villa stash house. That's where they did most of the digging there. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the Pancho Villa stash house is top of the picture, and the soldier's bunkhouse is bottom, and the horses' stables would have been to the right with it.
And the back.
Right here, exactly. Right here in the back. So, and that's very interesting because if you kind of look here, you'll see there's two parallel lines, which used to be one of the tunnels that kind of, and in the show, they show it coming from this location out to here. So right about where I have my cursor, there's two walls that kind of show a void. So the brighter the color, the bigger the density change. So that means the signal is bouncing faster through there. But I could kind of take you through the tomography where it starts at ground zero where it's coupling, and then kind of run it real quick through you guys. So right there, we're like about 2 or 3 feet. But some of the interesting areas is not only in that area, and that's where Gypsy found the button, and the coin was just in this area right here. But you could kind of see like even more over here in this area is some additional. And what's very interesting too is right here where the gate is that was one of the original areas of interest. But there would have had to have been a ton of digging that had to occur there. But the problem with that is that it would have undermined so much stuff. And the crazy thing is that after we did the show, it rained so much that this actually caved in.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
what was interesting about that particular spot, Cindy mentioned earlier the maintenance man. What was his name?
Rigo.
Okay. There was an interesting paranormal experience he had over there at this spot that John is talking about up at the front, that I had actually gotten a signal with my metal detectors there. They had gotten the signal with their equipment, and he had a paranormal experience. You remember what I'm talking about, don't you, Cindy? About
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That was so fascinating.
They took a picture. No one was standing there, and you can literally see a man standing there in the picture.
Oh my goodness!
I mean, I got chills. I've got chills right now. But it was definitely another spot that if we would have had time, that we could have. But a part of that too is we would have had to remove the brick. That there's like brick overlay in the front and then in the center that we would have had to remove. Probably some cement too, I'm sure. I can't remember exactly, but it would have been extra work. And it was hard enough, like what David and John and them, when they brought in the cement cutter just to cut the cement inside. Inside the stash house. That alone, just a whole lot of work that went into this. And there were 2 massive holes that we dug in the back. One, not only in the stash house, one outside, 2 outside. And that was the spoils that we were detecting, but where I got the button. And there's even a scene where I get down in one of those holes. I find a little bitty toy car too in there, but of course it wasn't significant, to the storyline. So, it ended up getting cut, but that was a lot of fun.
Wow. Yeah, I know with my metal detector, you mentioned finding, like, I've gone around my yard with one, most of my yard. I got about an acre here, and I found I found a bunch of little Matchbox cars that were buried in the ground. Like, some kid lost
It's
a lot of
fun,
Matchbox cars around here for some
right?
reason.
That's funny.
So a paranormal experience, I mean, that's, not now there's another, right up my alley. Cindy,
Holy topic.
I'm gonna have to pack up my gear and head out there and do a little investigation at some point.
Definitely.
Oh, man, I mean, because when you have a place like this, I'll touch on this just briefly because this isn't really about the whole paranormal experience, but when you have a particular, place like this, and they talk about all the emotion that goes into creating a place where a paranormal experiences can happen. This is a place where there would be a lot of emotion. I mean, you're talking about, all these people that are involved in the fighting and everything else that's going on. That's going to create a lot of tension.
Energy, a lot of
Yeah,
energy.
exactly. A lot of tension and energy that is going to be left over as residual. Uh, has there, Cindy? Has there been other instances of that?
Well, that's what I was. You reminded me of something. There was a lady there in 2020 at our first event whose father, first and foremost, also entered Columbus in 1916 when they, invaded Columbus and they had their battle there with the U.S. Cavalry. But she is a descendant because she's, his daughter, right? And she's about 70 something. And nowadays, she, she's a professional gal, but she's also a medium. So I invited her to this event, and she said, "This is not the first time that we've gathered here. Most of the people that are at this event in 2020, we've gathered here before in the past. I know all of us have been here together before." And so, and now that David is saying that he has relation to his wife, to Pancho Villa, and John also has relation to a very important revolutionary of the time, it seems like we keep on congregating. So who knows, Gypsy, you may have some American cavalry history here in El Paso as well as
Uh,
Tom, you know?
there's so
Yeah.
much history there. I can't wait to go back, and it would be fun. I think it's fun. I guess I'm so fascinated about the paranormal side too
Mhm.
that I think it would be fun to include that more in some of these shows. I know a lot of people don't believe, but I believe everything's connected.
Yep. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've done a lot of
Yeah.
paranormal investigations over the years. Not so many lately, but I've done a lot. And I tell you what, and it's like Maddie Blake and I were talking about this once when he came on the show. And he mentioned that there's people who believe and there's people who don't believe. So okay, so you believe in paranormal and that kind of thing. But once you've seen something,
An
once you've
experience.
had it, you are now a paranormal experiencer, and that lives with you forever. And now you want if it's, it either scares you completely away or it
Right.
intrigues you to where you want to know more. And I'm one of the ones that now I'm intrigued. I want to know more. So yeah, it's a great, yeah, and I don't think they're ever gonna bring it up on Beyond Oak Island or whatever. They're not gonna talk about that because then you got the fringe, and then they don't wanna go down that road. But it is something that it's to me, it can be very well be part of history. So,
Definitely.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think from our past experience, a lot of things that are like this, they usually have that paranormal experience to go along with it, and for one reason or another, it comes up a lot when we're talking about this stuff. So I don't I don't rule it out. I was like, well, if it was meant to be,
Mhm.
then we will. But what I always told John is being able to work with people like Cindy, getting to meet her and Gypsy and collaborate on this, and Enrique as well. It's to me there was a huge treasure in that as well. Just
Mhm.
being able to be a part of it, and being able to tell people, reach a broader audience about what we do in our company and everything. So, I mean, it's been a really amazing thing. Just so it was like a treasure alone for me. Now, whether something paranormal is keeping us from it, that's a whole nother thing. But
Yeah.
but it was a great experience, you know, and I took a lot of good things away with me.
That's fantastic. Yeah. That's and that's very true that, you mentioned that they could, are they keeping you from finding something? It's possible. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility, but it just depends on where you believe on all that kind of stuff. And
So
there's some really great chat going by here already. I think Michael Chamberlain, is that a friend of yours, Gypsy? Or
Yeah, I know Mike.
he said something
What does
here
he
about
say?
there's a chapter in pictures in Charles Garrett's book, Treasure Caches.
Can be found, yes.
So is that
About
something that you is that a book that's out in
That's
public?
a really good book. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can get it on Amazon. I bet you can. I actually have a signed autograph by Charles Garrett. And the first time I met Charles Garrett, he had just finished that book, and he was giving a talk at a Texas Treasure Show. And this was a good 20 something years ago when I was brand new into metal detecting. And I've got an autographed book, and it shows you how long it's been since I've read that book, because Mike's right. I think there is something on that, probably when they went and met Pancho Villa's wife in Mexico. I'll have to go back and look now, because now that piqued my curiosity, about that.
So when
another
you're
one. Go ahead.
So-
Go ahead, Tom.
yeah, so when you're detecting, it doesn't matter whether it's GPR or metal detector or whatever, you come along and you find an anomaly and you go, whoa, wait, that's not supposed to be there. And then you dig and you think, whoa, this really wasn't supposed to be here. What does that do to you? Like, how does that affect things?
Go ahead, John.
I think it's like there's so much buildup in the process alone, that we have what they call an ABCD process. So you have to start with level D, which is all the information that you guys are doing. It's the records. C is going to be like all the physical things that you actually can visually see on the surface. And then, of course, once we get to the next one, is the B, is we use the geophysical methods, whether it's GPR, radio detection, pulse induction type of machines. Then you kind of put all those information together. You can't just go dig blindly and roll out some other stuff, because, again, it's the redundancy in the process. But then when you dig that up and you kind of like put eyes to it, it's like a prize at the end of the day. It's like so much work went into that sometimes you get good results, sometimes you get false positives, but in the end, it's like, it's so well worth it. And I think it's just that's what's so rewarding in that entire process.
Yeah, I see somebody. Oh, go ahead, Gypsy.
No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, I see somebody in the comments said, "Spirits will guard treasure," and
That was Michael Chamberlain. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've heard that a lot of times, and so at that point,
maybe
it's hard to say.
Pancho is
Yeah.
guarding the rest of his treasure.
He's still guarding it. Yeah.
Have you ever had your machines go
Yeah.
wonky, for lack of a better term, and you can't explain why, and the next thing you know, they're working?
I've had a lot of metal detectors that's happened to. I don't know about John and David, but
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, you kind of got to look at the Mother Earth, the natural magnetic properties that kind of flow, through the ground. You kind of have your phone on. I mean, there was so much equipment, you get so much interference, you really don't know what you're looking at. But at the end of the day, it's just amazing when you get the hits. And I have an example of what that looks like. I could share with the.
Okay, yeah, please.
Yeah, please.
And I wanted to point out too, when you had that last picture up there, it looked like you guys were scanning up and down the road too. Did you go out and go up and down the street and everything?
Yeah, we did.
I saw those blue lines, and I thought, wow, they were outside of the compound there, or I call it a compound, outside the house area.
Yeah, I'll play that one time for you guys. So there is another anomaly right here on the road. Watch right here. Kind of look right here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was another area of interest. And the crazy thing is
like a tunnel.
We did our diligence in terms of what utilities were installed and what was there in the GIS and all of the as-built. So we know that there was no infrastructure in here. And that's why that was part of the process, is help us rule it out. But you can see as you go farther down right there, that you can see a clear 2 lines right there that would have been no tunnel.
For sure.
And again, you know, there was so many areas to look at. You know, we had to kind of simplify it a little bit, and of course, ripping up the sidewalk and everything. And the city may not appreciate it if I start excavating in the road there.
Right.
That might be a little touchy.
Yeah. Well, that was a question that Jan actually asked. Jan asked, she said, do you have to get permits to dig, even like on the property there? Even though it's owned privately, do you have to get permits to be able to dig up and do what you did there that day? Or
we did all the research, and pretty much any private type digging, you just initiate the 811 call to kind of make sure that you're not digging up a gas line or anything like that.
Right.
But other than that, it's pretty much open, and they don't have a specific permit unless you're installing something.
right.
And of course, that falls under different criteria. But yeah, and that's all the background work that didn't come into the show. That this is very, very important diligence part of the journey is to document this stuff. But
Did you probe any of the land between the bunkhouse and the stash house?
Oh,
in that alleyway?
I mean, yes. Like back here?
No, up between the bunkhouse and the stash house, right? Yeah, in that area.
Yeah, right here is where we got that one where the probe kind of fell through. Gypsy is talking about back here.
Okay.
Here. Right here is where everything sunk in, and that's where we hit. One of the original signatures that we had was probably in this area right here. When we were we found some stuff that was kind of had some common parallels in terms of the material that we found in this same area. And it was really interesting is because it was just common that, you know, we found bricks, we found wood, we found nails. It was just all the clues just adding up to there once was a tunnel that apparently that it could have been put it back and stuff like that. And another thing about GPR is back then they weren't going to compact the soil, but anytime you disturb the soil and you put it back, it's going to have a different density signature. So we know when it's been disturbed.
Right. Yep.
And one of the great examples when you're talking about anomalies is that like right here on the left, I don't know if you can see that. The left is a tomography of a forensic site that we had that Joey Gallegos, who was our expert GPR person who couldn't be here today, is that you can see how it reflects. And you know, I can't disclose a lot about it, but I could tell you that a lot of the information and all the work that went into it gave us a pretty good idea that this is what it was. So, you know, we're getting to the next phase of this where they're actually going to, you know, perform the next level of excavation and see what it is. But I think it's important to understand that it's not like you can just go turn it on and go push it around and you see a bunch of stuff. It has to mean something.
Yep. Yeah.
But over here on the right, you can kind of see where there's some the way a foundation structure would look and an archway. We like to see these hyperbolas right here because that just tickles us to death because it's like, oh, that doesn't naturally occur in the earth, right? That's just something that's not supposed to be there. But all these squiggly lines, you know, kind of like when we were kids and we were trying to watch TV and we seen all the channels and the floods. That's how it kind of looks like. Yeah,
dating us now, but yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know, yeah, we used to have to crank the channels.
Yeah,
adjust those rabbit ears.
Yeah, adjust those rabbit ears. Yep. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's really neat. And like you said, you know, yeah, you see something that's not naturally occurring like that archway or something like that, and that's going to mean that there, you know, there's, I guess, some sort of a structure. But, and again, that goes back to the whole training and learning what all this means. To me, it's kind of gibberish. Yeah, it looks like squiggly lines or that, like there might be something there. But, and again, like you said, soil density will make a change like that as well, correct?
That is correct. And I think one important thing to point out is that you have to get a soil map because I know Gypsy, I watch her shows. Her shows are really great. You got to check her out. Is that highly mineralized soils when you're trying to do your ground balancing and that, and also the effects that, you know, our GPR, they have the same technology. You got to understand how your system works. You got to calibrate it. You got to test it. You got
Sorry,
to do
I
all
can't hear y'all right now.
Uh-oh. Yeah, it should be good. Gypsy can't hear
you
us.
know, that's another important part of the diligence is get a soil map before you go digging and know how those conditions affect your machine. That's a big one.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And that's something that we talk about on Oak Island quite a bit when we talk about the Oak Island when they're looking down in the ground there. And it's so much of that ground has been disturbed before. But we were talking last night, we were talking about the bedrock. And what that bedrock is, does it change in level? Is it higher here and lower here, or is it so flat across the whole area? And what's underneath it? And so it is important, like you said, it's very, very important to know what's in that area, naturally occurring, and then get an idea of what you're supposed to. That helps you read the graphs, I'm assuming, at some point.
Yeah, it's 100% interpretation, but you got to have experience of the interpretation because it just takes practice, right? You got to know what the screen is saying. Like we always say, go by a culvert and run it over and know what that signature looks like.
Yep.
And that's why in the show it was really important when Dave was pushing the machine over the void, the existing one, is because hey, this is the baseline and the basis of what we're looking for in terms of a signature.
Mhm. Yeah, for
So
sure.
it,
Looks like
it really,
Go
it
ahead.
really boils down to know your equipment.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we lost Gypsy there for a minute. Are you back?
Sorry about that. I got an incoming call and it messed everything up.
Oh,
But
Oh dear.
I'm back.
all right, good. Yeah, we were just discussing about the soil density and knowing the topography of an area before it helps you to read
It,
understand what you're reading.
it really does make a difference. And, something that I learned working with John and David too, and talking more about what I learned about their equipment, how similar it really is to a metal detector in some ways, because they both work off of frequencies and they send these frequencies down into the ground and then it bounces off. With a metal detector, what happens is, depending on the soil and the mineralization in that soil, or the moisture in that soil, all of those things make a difference. And when those frequencies are sent down into the ground and then it bounces back off, if there's a metal object there, it will disturb. What happens is it actually disturbs that signal that's being sent into the ground. And once it disturbs it, it sends another signal back up to the receiver. And with modern metal detectors, modern technology, it lets us know kind of the range of that conductivity of that metal. So, for instance, if it's gold, it may hit on the scale where they've got a lower conductivity metal. Silver and brass hit as a higher conductivity. And I know that David had mentioned earlier pulse induction. There's metal detectors that work off pulse induction as well. Most modern metal detectors are very low frequency VLF machines, and then you have the metal detector we were discussing before the show that I just put out the info about a spring special on that Garrett has put out. It sends multi frequencies of different, like low and high frequencies, all simultaneously at the same time. So it has a better chance of hitting on a different type of metal.
Yep.
So that's where technology comes in so handy, with the way it has evolved over the years.
Right. Now,
Sorry,
Cindy,
I
are you
kind of
interested in
geeked
getting
out.
involved in the metal detecting as well?
Definitely, I think it's definitely ties into history and so forth. And since in Mexico, my forte is the state of Chihuahua, and I do spend a lot of time over there and in El Paso. I see my friends going to old missions in Chihuahua, 1700 buildings that are abandoned and so forth, and I see the coins that they find, and I'm sure that the adrenaline that they feel is the same adrenaline that the guys John and David and Gypsy feel when they find something cool. So I got to join the party here soon. Even if I have a little machine and not like GPR equipment, but definitely I can do my own here.
Yeah.
Well, considering that we only really excavated in a small fraction of the whole property, and even in that small area, we were able to find some really cool things. So it's like, and that's what really amazed me is, we did get some hits for things, but we in a way it was just sort of random places that we were able to find stuff. So imagine being able to cover the whole property. I'm sure there's a lot of other treasures in there that, you know, you wouldn't know until you dug, big or small, and the targets, whether they're shallow or deep. And, you know, me and John have learned over the years from when we first started doing GPR that there's no, first off, GPR isn't a silver bullet type tool.
Right.
And not only that, but there's different frequencies of GPR that allow us to get, to have bigger or smaller waves that allow us to go deeper than others. And then, of course, considering the soil densities like John mentioned. But it's a fun thing to be in. And then Gypsy, I can imagine how many different metal detectors you have, you know, just to help you. And so, you know, you do your homework, you do your research, and you figure out which tool might be the best to start off with. And you know, a lot of people, they'll get into GPR thinking, you know, it's going to be the silver bullet, and then they come to find out it's not. And you know, even I found myself in a particular situation when we first started doing GPR where I was looking for a water line. We had rented a GPR machine and looking for a water line and couldn't find the dang thing, you know, and I was doing circles around a fire hydrant, so I knew there had to be a water line there somewhere. And called the guy who rented it to us, and he told me, well, hey, Dave, you know, there's about 7 or 8 different tools you need to be doing this type of work. And I told, well, that's not what you said when you rented us this machine, but okay.
Let me ask y'all,
Oh,
have
sure.
you ever used dowsing rods? Just curious.
Oh, yeah. Dowsing rods. That's a very interesting subject. We
Right.
use them. I don't know. John says, you know, calls it a pseudoscience. It can't quite be proven.
Right.
Sometimes it works for me. For John, it works really good. For whatever he can
Wow.
get the dowsing rods to work. I don't know if for me, sometimes it's mental. But we were doing some investigating just the other day with the gentleman, and he was really freaking us out because he was holding the dowsing rod out, and then he would say, John, and it would go towards John, and then he would say David, and it would go towards me, Carrie, and we're like, whoa, what's going on? This is pretty crazy.
I think the best story though that I've heard with dowsing rods, Gypsy, was actually by you. We were talking about using those on male and female graves. I think you should tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, wow.
Oh man. Yeah. Hopefully, you know, that could come in handy with some of the stuff I've been investigating lately. I actually did use a metal detector. I think I mentioned that. My aunt, the people had mowed over, she was getting ready to get the gravestone put in for my uncle. And she asked me to come up with my metal detector and see if I could find this, because the people that do the lawn, take care of the cemetery, they had mowed over his metal plate and couldn't find the marker. So she said, I know his grave is somewhere here. So I marked it for her. But you can do this exact same thing with dowsing rods. And there was a gentleman in our metal detecting club that taught me how to use those. And so occasionally, you know, there's people that claim that I've never tried it. I haven't tried it yet, but it's something I want to do to find gold. And this last weekend at a Texas treasure show, there was a man there he's made some new dowsing rods that I want to learn how to use. And we're going to be working together on some future projects and hopefully another Beyond episode project that we're working on together. So we'll see how that happens. So maybe y'all will get to see some dowsing rods in a future episode.
Yeah, and one other cool thing about the dowsing rods is, and John's exhibited this for us, is where he'll go over the target and then he'll stomp his foot a few times, and they'll move back and forth, and however many times they move is approximately how many feet.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, and it worked. We've tried it a few times, but as a matter of fact, I think it was last week or the week before we did it. When the guy was showing us stuff, we were out there with the dowsing rods, you know, having a good conversation. But yeah, John stomped his foot, and sure enough, they go like this, like twice. You know.
Oh yeah.
And
I think
it
another cool thing to add to the grave story is that when you and this was just told them, you haven't tried it, is that when you walk over male graves, they'll either go out or in, right? And then you walk over female and they'll go exactly the opposite. And for whatever reason that phenomena is, we have yet to test it, even though we do a lot of cemetery type of surveys for
So
remains.
you really need to test it, John, because that's how I learned. The gentleman that taught me how to use them, he told me, you know, and that's what Tom was saying a while ago. I talked a little bit about this last time, but he took me first. He told me to go practice in the backyard, find all the pipelines. So I did, and I found them all. And then after that, he said, okay, you're going to think I'm crazy, but we're going to the cemetery. And he had me walk across these graves. And he told me, you know, okay, if it does this, it's male. If it does this, it's female. And then this means it's possibly child. And so we practiced it and it worked. And then we found out every time, male, female, we could tell. It's been a long time since I've done that. I need more practice at it, but it works. I don't know how it works, but it works.
Wow.
I think it helps if you have a big steak dinner with a lot of iron the night before.
Right.
Yeah, maybe so. But I've seen that, you know, and I've watched. Well, as a matter of fact, you know, going back to the Oak Island story, 10X. If you're familiar with the Oak Island and all the history or some of the history with it, 10X was found by Dan Blankenship with dowsing rods.
Dowsing rods.
He walked over that area, all around that whole area, and he was able to use the dowsing rods and said, "There is a chamber down below here." And he was so confident in that he dug that hole 100 and I forget how many feet down, 160 feet down, and sure enough, there's a chamber down there. Now, how in the heck that was found with dowsing rods blows my mind, but he did. And he was confident enough to be able to, well, they drilled first, obviously, and then hit that void. Then he ended up putting he took these old tanker cars from a train, cut off both ends, and started stacking them in that hole and digging it out to get down to that chamber. And sure enough, it was there. So, I mean, it works. I mean, how does it work? I don't know. It just
so Cindy, do you have any locations you'd like to try the dowsing at?
I know. I'm actually, my mind is going wild right now thinking about different places.
She's going to call me later and say, hey, Gypsy, let's go here and let's go there.
I'll give you a hint. There's the Franklin Mountain monk gold that is up there. I'll just give you a little tip on that one, okay?
Okay, yes, by UTEP you mean, right?
Yeah, there's supposedly a place up there, and I think Mr. Pope was the one who was telling me about it. But you know, that's definitely a future endeavor.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I have a good idea. I forgot to mention this since you guys are asking. I have a friend who happens to, by miracle, have found out that his dad had a property in El Paso, Texas. His dad passed away 2 years ago, and I won't say the name of the rev. Well, I guess I will say the name of the rev. Well, I'll keep it low key. Well, he's an important revolutionary that actually partnered up with Villa at the original battles here in Juarez, and he owns the house now. Once he found out he inherited it, and he's fixing it up. And he says that every night around noon, he hears noises, la, la, la. Lady says she's seen a tall man with a hat walking around the house, and it describes this revolutionary to a T. And so, you know how they say that a ghost always comes back to where he's left treasures at? And this was one of the last houses he lived at a little bit before, you know, he was killed somewhere by Van Horn, Texas, by Texas Rangers. And with that, the ones that know Mexican Revolution history will know who I'm talking about. But he is ready to take anyone who wants to come and, you know, metal detect his property. And I need to set up a time with John because he's ready.
Let's go, Cindy.
And Gypsy, yeah, he's ready.
Let's go.
Hey, Gypsy, I do have a couple of Mind Lab CTX 3030 and Mind Lab 7000 you could try out there too.
Okay, yeah. I've used just about every brand. I'm sponsored by Garrett, so if I'm on camera, I'm supposed to be using their equipment. But I used to have a mine lab that I used for many, many years. They're great machines as well. So that would be great. I mean, we should maybe we need to contact John, not you, John, but the other John from Prometheus, and see about another episode. I think that'd be one to investigate for sure, because it's connection too. Right, Cindy?
But first he told me to go practice in the backyard, find all the pipelines. So I did, and I found them all. And then after that, he said, okay, you're going to think I'm crazy, but we're going to the...
Oh. I think we had a bit of an internet lag there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you still with us? Are you with us still, Cindy?
So worst case scenario, John, you could give Cindy a crash course in running a detector.
There you go.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I'm part of his team now with a lot of things that we're doing, right? Marketing, and therefore, so I will learn from these guys as well.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize also that what we're doing here is actually a repeatable process for many of the people out there, you know, and what's huge, and David does a lot this with the students. He is an adjunct instructor at the NMSU campus with the civil and surveying students, is that we advocate to be able to use this technology to help educate anybody who wants to learn. And the big thing about it is that, you know, we're not afraid to sit there and put all our heads together and be able to come up with a process and help them if they want to come and push it apart and do all of this. I think it's important to understand that it's an opportunity.
Yep.
Yeah. So when you combine your technology with the history that Cindy and Gypsy would know, you could make some pretty cool discoveries.
And it goes hand in hand, just like you're saying, Tom. Those kind of things go hand in hand. I mean, with the research that Cindy has in the areas and the different players, and that's one of the questions I wanted to kind of get back to about some of the revolutionaries that were involved. You know, if you have the site where you know that some of this is taking place, to be able to get we're getting a little bit of a, there we go,
feedback loop or something. Yeah,
feedback there. But you know, being able to now take that research and add technology to it, like you did on the show Tuesday night, to get more answers, because now if you start digging and you find it's something that they talk about, you know, on Oak Island or any other show like that, they find a lot of different things. They find some wood, they find some metal, they find some nails, they find some ox shoes or whatever. These things do tell a story. When you start to put them all together and look at them as a whole, they do begin to tell you a story. And that's what you need. So you have you have the research, you know who was in the area, but you have a lot of questions. Now you can add the technology to try to bring together some answers, and it helps you to put it all together. So I think it's a marriage made in heaven to be able to have all you working together, Cindy and John and David and the team and Gypsy. I mean, it just means that you're going to be able to get that much more information, right?
Yeah, it's like putting a piece, you know, we're all discovering pieces of the puzzle together.
Right. Yep.
And then once we put all of our pieces together, it creates this one big picture. And that's a perfect analogy right there, Jeff. That was good.
Yeah. That was, you know, and that's something I wanted to kind of touch base with you again, Cindy. There, you know, we had Pancho Villa that you've done a lot of research on, and there were some other ones that were kind of brought up on the show. And forgive me, I've forgotten their names, but I know that Tom probably has them written down here. But what are some of the other players that were taking place at that time, and have you looked into their past as well?
Well, one of them that is very important for the El Paso area is Pascual Orozco. And General Pascual Orozco, and they mentioned him at the beginning of the program. And actually, that's the home that I want to go metal detect there, the one that I was mentioning. Mm-hmm. And so, big player in the area. And they also recruited a lot of Americans here from El Paso as well to join the Mexican Revolution. So it's very interesting that it was kind of, you know, not just Mexicans, Mexican Americans, but even Americans wanting the fame or the glory of helping a cause. And so downtown El Paso, there's a building there where they did the recruitment. And as a matter of fact, on March 13th, I'll be doing a tour downtown with Dr. David Romo, who wrote the book Ring Sightsee to a Mexican Revolution. And he'll be taking us to a lot of these different locations where meetings or revolutionaries, definitely stop by.
That's very interesting. And then now, are they all some of these other folks that are involved? Is that all in this general area that you're working in, or is it kind of spread out, or New Mexico and all of that?
Well, it's funny because a lot of these Mexican revolutionaries can be as far away back then from Mexico City, Coahuila, Durango, Zacatecas, and they all made El Paso their hub.
Oh,
And
wow.
they also use San Antonio as a hub, and of course, being El Paso where it's at, they ended up most likely also in Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is only a couple of miles north of El Paso, Texas. So anything in this region, these Mexican revolutionaries in Mexico and the U.S. El Paso, Las Cruces, San Antonio, Odessa, all these border towns, they were definitely going back and forth, either visiting family, hiding, stashing money, going back to Mexico. And so this is the hot spot, definitely, this whole area.
Yeah, so they could have been following common trails then, and there could be various stashes from various people anywhere along those trails.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Maybe even in Las Cruces, there could be a Pancho Villa stash house that we're not aware of. Because apparently he did stop by in Mesilla, which is a historical town there. What is that? Just a mile or two away from Las Cruces, David?
Yeah,
Mesilla?
it's just kind of on the west side of town, sort of connected to Las Cruces, but a lot of history there. Old Mesilla. It's been there for quite some time, so I'm sure I can see, like you're mentioning, trade routes or just trail, just ancient highways, if you will.
I think it's also important to understand history there too. Is you got to remember Pat Garrett was shot in the Mesilla area in the back, and he's buried in the cemetery in Las Cruces.
Oh, really?
Yes, a lot of people don't know that about that history, and just us creating awareness about that stuff really gets the blood boiling and going, and gets people super excited about.
Now that's in the Billy the Kid story, right? Pat Garrett?
That's the Billy Kid story, yeah, and it's been documented. And if you go online, you could definitely find a lot of pictures and documentation. They have a stone of where he was shot, and it's kind of on private property, but it's just another attraction to it. But back in the day too, and Cindy and I were talking about this, is a lot of the people who were immigrating across from Mexico into New Mexico would hide in cemeteries because they were superstitious, and they would bury a lot of their jewels and stuff in the cemeteries because the people would take them food and stuff to the cemetery because the soldiers and them wouldn't chase them in the cemeteries.
Wow.
And you brought a good point, John. At the stash house, wasn't there somewhere we were digging, and that could have been also an old potty there, right? And Gypsy, right? Wasn't there like a potty there?
Yeah,
at one point?
a privy. And what we were wanting to do, and when I probed down to that area, I was wanting to dig that out because back then they would take a lot of things and hide them in old outhouses, the potties. Because a lot of people didn't want to go in there because of the smell. So,
Yeah.
so it was actually a great place to stash treasure. And sometimes they would lower it down with a rope, have a little hidden something where that rope was hidden. And then when they needed it, they could pull it back up. But not to mention the other stuff. There was weapons sometimes hidden those, guns. It would be a perfect hiding place. And I think I located part of that there, but who knows? That was one of my things I really wanted to dig out, but just not enough time.
And to add to your point, Gypsy, when we did the excavation, because it was our equipment that they were using for the excavation, when we started getting down, we were finding old charcoal pits with old bones from soup. We found a ton of
Really?
bottles. Yeah, but once we were going deeper, we found some fetishes from like some of the indigenous people that were there. There was a few artifacts that we found. Yeah. But that's when it started raining so much that it was filling with water. We had to stop. We were like, I couldn't sleep for 2 or 3 days because I wanted to go out there and just dig it up. But
you wanted to go back out there.
Yeah, and that's what's exciting. So there is much to be found, even though people don't realize, and for myself personally, it's not all about finding the gold and the treasure. It's the journey and the history that you're trying to put all together and be able to live to tell that story to someone else. And I think it's important to be able to capture that.
So right.
Yeah, that's
so right.
you know, some of the things that you know, we had from information that we got from the show. I wanted to bring up, and probably with Cindy, you know, one of the points was that they took about. He said Pancho Villa took about 600,000 pesos in gold bars from the former governor. Um, Now, do you have any idea what happened? Were they ever found? Were they used? Do you know much more about that? Is that something that's still missing, or?
Well, I'm not sure if it's still missing. I'm sure it's been utilized right to some extent, especially it was so much money. And I think part of those treasures are the ones that are said to be hidden throughout the Sierra of Chihuahua, the state of Chihuahua. So there's still possibility that some of that portion of that gold is somewhere around Chihuahua, even in El Paso. And there's something I heard recently, and I can't prove it as of now, but I heard that there was a house in downtown El Paso that they did find some gold a couple of years ago, and with that money, they were able to restore this property. And it's really close by to the Pancho Villa stash house, which says that there's still probably houses with hidden treasures for sure, because I'm sure Villa and his men and his brother had to leave stashes everywhere. Because if they visited El Paso, it was like their ATM, right? They needed money, so they would and then try to spend it, go back to Chihuahua, and so it was their ATMs wherever they would leave money. They just had to remember where everything was at, and I'm sure eventually they couldn't come back to it.
Right.
Wow.
So yeah,
I don't think they had GPS coordinates for it.
No.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. And that's and I know that he was actually assassinated, right? Pancho Villa was. At some it was a rival, I guess, that took him out.
Well, it's funny. Notice how everything comes together. All of us here, and I'm also the friends with the Villa family. And it's funny. A month ago, I met a lady, and she was just sitting in front of me right now as we started recording. And guess who she was? You're not going to believe it. And she's my mom's friend. And I could not believe I met this lady. Now I call her my friend, and she's been in my mom's house every day. And she was sitting right now. She is the granddaughter of one of the people who killed Pancho Villa.
Really?
It was her grandfather, her great uncle, and a first cousin of theirs. And so I interviewed her and everything, and yeah, she proved everything she was saying. And her grandfather didn't say anything for a long time. He was afraid they would kill him, right, for doing what he did. But they paid him for it, and it was actually the Mexican government that, for whatever reason, they needed Pancho Villa out in case he ever caused another revolution. But Pancho Villa did the right thing. He gave up his guns. They convinced him, but he did it on his own. They didn't force him to in 1920, and he did the right thing, and he still ended up getting assassinated afterwards. So yeah, it was the government who did all that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they hired people that probably had a hidden agenda against Pancho Villa. Maybe one of their ancestors had been killed in the revolution and so forth. So they had the guts to do that. And so they ambushed him as he was leaving his wife's house, Manuela Casas. And it's funny because I befriended the grandsons recently, like 2 years ago, and their father was the only son that Pancho Villa had with this one young lady. The very last woman he saw when he left the house, he kissed her goodbye. He kissed the baby. He was only a couple of weeks old. And as soon as he was driving down a road there in Parral, Chihuahua, they ambushed him. And that baby, eventually, guess who he ended up being? He ended up being a double for John Wayne in his movies.
Oh, really?
Really?
His name is Trini Villa, Trini Villa. If you Google him, or I've even posted some things on Facebook, you see Trini alongside with John Wayne, and John Wayne wouldn't do a movie without Trini by his side. By his side.
Wow.
So it's funny how Pancho Villa's son ends up being a Hollywood actor, double for John Wayne in westerns. So
wow, that's amazing.
Pancho Villa did. Oh, sorry.
No, please go ahead, Dave.
I'll say Pancho Villa did some acting himself as
well.
Did
he?
Oh yeah, I guess definitely. Thank you for the reminder. He would be our first documentary actor, pretty much, because that was when the first documentaries. His would be the first war documentary right there, and then he was the actor of it. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
But just his physical
when you look at some of the
appearance,
pictures that he does, he obviously liked the camera. He liked to pose.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. He kind of had that look, right? That face, the name. I mean, there's just something about the name, even Pancho Villa, just the way it says. A lot of people know the name. You know, they may not know a lot of details, but you definitely know the name. Yeah, look, I mean, he's definitely a ham for the camera. You know, he would have been all over Oak Island.
He was kind of like the Facebook at the time, or social media. I bet you anything was in the future that went to the past, because the guy had it down. He knew what to do to get the publicity.
Right.
Yeah, he sure did.
They do have a movie. Antonio Banderas plays him in that movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's really good.
Oh, wow.
I have to watch it.
Yeah, for sure. That's pretty neat.
I think another interesting fact too, Cindy, that's really a good mentionable is there was a lot of German spy activity during the Mexican Revolution too.
Really?
Definitely.
Yeah, they were they were selling arms to Pancho Villa supposedly, right, and trying to get him to build submarines and some other stuff along the coast there. But nobody really knows. But we were like so excited that let's find a German button and that'll open up some doors.
Wow.
Right.
Well, you did find one button, though, and you thought it might have been a British button.
No, it's U.S. It was a great U.S. Great Seal button.
I thought I had a picture of it, but I don't.
It did fit in with, kind of the history there, as they had Cindy talk a little bit about that. So it was an interesting find and a cool find. Is this the one? So yes. Yeah. So you can see the eagle on there, and then the shield in the center, and that is the Great Seal button.
Okay.
So.
Oh yes, you can see.
Yeah, that's a cool find.
Definitely a cool find, and like I was saying earlier, they all tell a story when you put all these things together.
Yeah, I would love to know what soldier wore that, and was he one of the raiders that came on the property? I mean, to seize some of that stash. I don't know. I didn't get to research the button. Most of those buttons have a back mark on the back because that still had the shank on it. So it has writing that means around the shank that will give a back mark that you can look up and actually tell the age and where it was made, etc. And I do believe the owner still has that. So that could be something that could be researched further and find out more information about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was also a coin found. This one here, I think it was a coin. Was it a coin that was found? Do you guys remember this one?
Yes, Cindy and I spotted that at the same time. We eyeballed that one, didn't we, Cindy? And Marty was digging down with his equipment, and he was taking the spoils and dropping them, and it just kind of plopped out and rolled. And we're sitting there, Cindy and I are like, hey, there's a coin. And finally we got, we were like ready. And there's like, don't do anything, because they had to wait till he was finished digging all that stuff out. And then they said, okay. And so they filmed it, us grabbing it and looking at it.
So what was it? What did it end up being?
It was a
centavo, right?
A centavo.
Yeah, almost like a penny. Exactly. 1905, right?
1905.
1905, wow. They said on the show, yeah.
Wow, that's really cool.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Very
cool. Now the other coins that they found when they were renovating the stash house, what era were they from? They all from the same era? Or?
Yeah, from the same era. the same area, and besides the money, which is important, they actually found very, very precious jewelry at the house, very precious jewelry that they ended up confiscating.
You didn't see that on the show, did you?
Exactly. Yeah, that was, but one of them, one necklace in particular that I found in some documents was given to by a businessman, was given to Luz Corral, who was Pancho Villa's first wife. So that was in the safe, this beautiful, beautiful necklace given by a businessman to Luz Corral. So the only thing I can think of, like, well, if Pancho Villa was busy, fighting battles over there, Luz Corral, may have had, a suitor,
Other
over
interest.
here in El Paso, Texas. Yeah, and he happened to be an American, Anglo-American, and so because it was a very expensive jewelry from what I read in this, in this document, and so those are the type of things that we're finding that belong to the Villa family. So a lot of these things that they confiscated after they were interviewed by U.S. Customs and proved that it was not stolen, it was given back to them. But all this, came from their mouth, Luz Corral and Hipólito, once they got interviewed, that no, it was not stolen stuff. It's our stuff, and so, it just looked too good to be true to the Americans. But in this case, it was legit stuff. Maybe not all the money, but the jewelry for sure belonged to them. Because they interviewed a lot of people, and a lot of people said, yeah, we've seen them with that jewelry before. It's not, I recognize that necklace. I recognize that watch. I recognize this. So it was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, that brings up a very good point too. And we know we've heard some of the laws going on when you find stuff like down in Florida. When they find something in the water, it has to be, you got to document everything, of course, but portion of it goes to the state and portion of it is being able to keep. If you find it on the beach, it has different things. What's the laws going on right there in the El Paso area? If you let's say you were to dig there on this gentleman owns this property, and you were to dig there and you found an old can full of gold coins, are you allowed to keep that? What's the rule there on that?
I'm sure John can answer it better than me. And David, do you want to answer that? Or
isn't it 50-50 or finders keepers?
50-50 on everything you report.
I'm all for that.
That's a great question. And nobody thinks that it's a big deal.
I guess it depends on the agreement, right?
Yeah. And I mean, we know through time, and even then, an amount of treasure or money like that can make a lot of people do some crazy things. So
for sure, yeah.
And not to mention some of the paranormal stuff we mentioned earlier. It's like, well, do I really want to find it, or is it also just fun looking for it too?
Yeah.
I want to be in the right energy. I want to use it and use this platform for the right reasons as well.
Yep.
Which I know we're doing, but.
Well, I do have a small treat for you guys.
Oh.
And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we should research that and ask the museum about what happens when you find that on private property. We'll look into that, and maybe on the next episode we can do it.
All right.
But I do have a picture of what we found. Just a little bit of digging. I found the picture, and I'll share it with you guys.
Okay.
And some of this is the stuff that didn't make the show, but let me pull it up here real quick.
And while John's pulling that up and things that didn't make the show, I just wanted to take a moment to give some appreciation to some of our other team members that were there, in particular Joey Gallegos, who's also one of our GPR experts. He was very instrumental in bringing down the equipment for us and coming from Albuquerque and everything that. So yeah, the show didn't quite get him too much, but he was very instrumental and helpful in getting us all set up with everything.
Yeah. There's so many people go behind the scenes of this thing. We see the people that are going to be famous, like you four right here, being on the show. But again, there's probably a whole list of people that go together to make all this happen. So That's good that you mentioned them.
Yeah.
All right, so I've got a picture here. Looks like, let's see what the. Oh wow.
Yeah. So the plate that he showed him in the end is this one here. There was there's the bottle right there. Do you remember he showed that bottle?
Small
That's it
white
right
bottle.
there.
Yep.
Yeah. There was some shoes and some what we found. This is a piece of a saddle because we found some
Really?
yeah, and we never got to go beyond that. But
Hey, let me ask you, did y'all get to do any sifting?
we did not. That is the one thing I put together a makeshift sifter, and we didn't even get to that point, unfortunately. But I hope to one day that Enrique kind of opens that up to us. But that's basically this is just what we found with the immediate eye.
Right. If y'all go back, I know that he had invited us all back. But if you do happen to go back, I would love to bring some sifters. That's the type of work I do a lot is, it's amateur archaeology, of course, but I like finding anything of historical value. Even those bottles, what's fascinating about the bottles themselves, you can trace that back to when they were made, what the bottle contained, and some of those bottles are actually sometimes worth something. So I dig a lot of bottles, a lot of old dumps, and like Cindy had mentioned earlier, the old bathrooms, what they call the privies. Of course, all of that has disintegrated.
Hopefully
all that stuff is gone, but what's left behind is over time is it fills up with dirt and water, and a lot of that's covered up, bulldozed over, that kind of thing gets covered up. And when you dig those privies out, just the things that fall out of people's pockets, what if we found something that belonged to Pancho Villa himself that was identifiable with his initials on it or something like that? Think about that. That would be amazing. Those are the type of things I really love to find. And you think about them going to the restroom, a little story that happened to me many years ago is I was attending those porta potties at a flea market, and I forgot my cell phone was in my back pocket and it so it stayed there. But what my point,
you didn't dive in after it?
I didn't dive in. So my point is think of the things that they took to the bathroom, in their pockets. Maybe Pancho Villa had one of his favorite sidearms, his guns that might have fallen in there. Might have had, some gold and silver coins in his pocket. So it's unreal what you find in some of those privies. Old bathrooms.
Yeah.
I can just imagine him looking back and going, "No, I don't need it that bad."
Get another one.
Hey, I did hear a tall tale. Don't know if it's true, but they say that they have Pancho Villa's trigger finger at one of the pawn shops downtown El Paso.
What? I want to go see
his trigger finger.
Yeah.
Have you heard about that, Cindy?
Oh my God.
Yeah, the pawn shop, a couple of blocks away from the stash house there. Definitely. The owner's really cool. Yeah.
Wow.
That's funny.
Cindy, when I go back, you got to take me. We'll go check it out.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
Well, so we know what's going to happen, Gypsy. We know that at least part of your story in the future here is you're going to be doing a lot more metal detecting. And I have linked your site. Zero Discrimination is in the chat below, folks. And we did put that in there if you'd like to go out and check that out with her. And I wanted to ask Cindy, what it sounds like with all the research and the many things that you've done here, have you thought about writing a book or doing a documentary and putting this all together into something formalized?
Definitely. One of the things that I'm doing right now, it's just the PR is just taking off with everything I'm doing. One of the, I have a page that I just started called Pancho Villa, USA, Mexico, 1923 to 2023, because next year, 2023, will be 100 years since Pancho Villa's assassination.
Oh, wow.
So I am working with the family about doing a commemoration, not just for him, but all the men that died who believed in his vision. And so we have a lot of work, and a lot of the work begins next week when I pick them all up from the airport. The grandsons, 2 grandsons, will be having meetings about what we need to do. We have a year and a half to go because he was assassinated in July, 1923. So a lot of work. So we're working on that. I'm also the administrator for the Pancho Villa page. We have 450,000 followers, and I just partnered up with another descendant of a big revolutionary, one of the biggest revolutionaries besides Pancho Villa. And so I'm working on the PR work. I'm working on events. I think that's where my concentration will be for now. I love books. I think everyone that's writing a book, kudos to them, because it takes a lot of research and everything. I do have one work that's in progress, but it's more on a grandfather that's from the 1800s in Mexico City. I mean, in Chihuahua City, who happened to be a surveyor. And so now that I'm working with CSTI here with John and with David, and I'm like, oh my God, my grandfather brought me back to something else that I should be learning how surveying is done, or some old tactics along with the new technology. So that's one book I'm working on. But on the Mexican Revolution, it's more events, doing things differently, and adding our own Mexican American and Mexican perspective to the Anglo perspective. Because as you know, a lot of people may have grandfathers that were on the expedition with Pershing, and they're not very fond of Villa, so they have their own opinion. But Mexicans also have their own opinion. So if we combine them, we can definitely just kind of come to a
That's a good idea. Yeah.
to not an agreement, but at least some kind of base of understanding.
Yeah.
And so next week at the commemoration at the next week is the anniversary of the when Villa arrived in Columbus, New Mexico, March 9th of 1916. So I'm working alongside the mayor, Bruce Salas, and the Chamber of Commerce there, Ms. Norma. And so I'm helping with a lot of things. And one thing on Friday the 11th, we're doing a Bury the Hatchet event with one of two of Pancho Villa's, the 3 of Pancho Villa's grandsons, with one descendant of a person who actually died in the friendly fire there and everything. And so for all these generations, they haven't been at ease. And I understand them. A lot of Mexicans still are not at ease. But then when we have people with emotional maturity, we can come to an agreement to just make peace with everything. So I'm part of that Bury the Hatchet. I'm the one who I'm bringing the grandsons over to do a Bury the Hatchet ceremony. So there's working on kind of just doing some historical moments, historical events, and partnering up presently and then in the future with Gypsy again and John and David and and all the great people that we work in the region and so forth.
Wow, that's fantastic. And let us know. I mean, you and I will keep in touch as we go along here. And if there's something that you would like to bring out to the public that you can share, let me know. I would be glad to have you on the show, and we can just do a one-on-one, and you can come on and share some new information and kind of what you're doing, because this is fascinating, and it's really something that needs to be done. It really is, and it's bringing the cultures together. Like you said, you may not get everybody to hug and and all of that, but if you can have a better understanding, I think that's really, really important, not only for our countries and just going forward and as peoples. You know what I mean? So I think it's fantastic. It really is. And let me know how we can help for sure.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah. Gypsy, what do you got going on? You got some great things happening here in the future that you can talk about? I know there's some you can't.
Be very careful.
There's some I can't. There's some I can't. But I've been talking with one of the producers for Beyond about some future episodes. And I do, like I told y'all earlier, I'm glad we did this show tonight because I wanted to talk to them about my lead on this other Pancho Villa thing so we could have us all gather together again as a team and see if we can locate this one big, supposedly big one, and it is in Texas too. So from my source. So we'll try to get that going and see if we can't get that added to season 3 and have the whole gang all back together again. And some other things, I'm going to be traveling to North Carolina in about a week and a half to a big treasure show up there. It lasts a whole week. So I'll be metal detecting on some property up there, making some videos. And then another one up in the New England area after that. And then another TV show that I'm going to be working on. We're going to be filming in Utah for an episode of that. And then hopefully later this summer again with Beyond. So hopefully we'll see y'all
You're
again.
busy.
Wow.
Man, that's great. Good to hear that you're keeping busy with all of that, and also too, Cindy. Before I forget about this, I wanted to mention that I was putting website links for. I've got a website link for John and David for their company in the description below, and I've got Gypsy Jewels. I got the Zero Discrimination. Fantastic videos that she puts out. If people want to go out and check those out, they're really, really good. I'm a subscriber to the channel. And I didn't know, Cindy, do you have any kind of a place that you wanted to share, a website or anything like that?
They can reach me through my Facebook, Cindy Medina. I can be reached at mexicanrevolutionhistory@gmail.com. And those are the best places. I do have some history pages on Facebook, New Spain and Mexico History Facebook group, and also the Mexican Revolution History Facebook group. They can follow my post there as well. I do have a website, and I'm working on it as we speak, because I got to gather all the events and all the stuff, presentations and conferences that are coming up. And so I'm putting everything together right now with a great guy here in El Paso that's working on that for me on the website. Okay. But other than that, they can email me or they can call me as well, 512-591-8001. Austin area code. I lived there for many years, even though I'm from El Paso. So I love my 512 area code. I won't let go of it.
I know. That's why
my area code.
I'm the same way with 906 is from up there. So up in the UP of Michigan. So same place where Rick and Marty Lagina are from originally. Not Rick still lives up there, but Marty doesn't. But so that's great. But before you leave tonight, or when you get a minute, send those to me, those email addresses. I will put them in the link or the description below so that people can reach out to you if they want to. They can do that. Go ahead.
Definitely. And real quick, because you were asking me earlier if I had a funny story, and everyone can tie into this, Gypsy, myself, David, and John, and Marty, and Maddie. But remember, Gypsy, how hot it was?
Yes.
It was so hot. Either I would find Maddie in the cooler at the gas station, in the beer cooler, or he was in the car chatting with Gypsy with the AC full blast. And one time I joined them.
I've got a photo. I've got a photo of Maddie Blake in that. Cindy and I were over there. We had taken a break and walked across the street to his convenience store to get a drink and cool off. And I've got a photo of Maddie Blake doing his arms out like this in the cooler cooling off.
That's hilarious.
Cindy and I, we all took turns getting in there and cooling off. So it was so hot.
It was hot. How did you handle it? Yeah.
Remember remember the bathtub out back?
It was just.
There was a picture. Empty. I saw there was a couple of them in the one picture. What happened there? You got to tell the story now.
It was empty. It was empty, but it was funny. We were just sitting on it and lounging on it. It would have been fun if we would have filled it with water to cool off.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
How did you guys handle it, David and John? The heat. How did you guys handle it?
Well, we're used to it. Being surveyors, we're typically.
Oh, that's right.
In that type of environment, whether it's hot or cold, we're pretty adaptable to that type of stuff. But yeah, with all the dust and the heat, I mean, it was, and you just got to be patient with the production time and everything too. So, but in the off time, we had a good time meeting everybody. We had John's son Tegan with us too, as you mentioned earlier. And we were able to chat and get to know people better and get connected and stuff. So, we try to make best use of the off time. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty extreme still. And like I said, there's a picture we took at the end of the production. I said, you know what, we all got to get together and take a picture, and we were all in it together. We were probably sweaty, dirty, and stinky, but we still squeezed in for a good photo there.
That group picture, that was your idea, David? That great group picture?
Yeah.
Thank God.
I figured, you know what, right before we're about to all, because you become connected and you become close with each other because you spent the last 2 to 3 days together spending this time and doing something really cool. So it's just like, hey, you know what? Let's capture this moment before we all go our own ways. Hopefully not for good, because we all want to meet up again and keep working on this project or others. But it was cool to just get a snapshot of time there.
Well, if Pancho had his group photo, you should have yours too, right?
Exactly.
That's right.
There you go. See, on the same property.
And really, that's a good point. At some point, even 100 years from now, are we making history right now? And what we're doing by doing this discovery could be commemorated at some point as well. And just kind of, being a part of that whole process.
Yep.
I think it's important that this is a good survey motto: follow in the footsteps, lay the groundwork. That's a very important thing we're doing right now.
Yeah, that is. That's really good. What do you guys have coming up in the future, John and David? I mean, you guys are anything exciting going on besides looking for power lines and water lines?
I know, right? Yeah.
Well,
go ahead, John, I'll let you know.
One of the things, I mean, we have many treasure hunting opportunities that I can't really talk about, but
there you go.
I can tell you it has to do with some Spanish influences and with some UFO phenomena in the mysterious mountains in Arizona. So it's kind of like taking all of that and being able to volunteer and go out there and just utilize this cool technology and help tell this story. Beyond that, I think David has a pretty good another dimension to add to that also.
Are you referring to the educational stuff, or?
Yeah, the educational and diversity stuff, I think, is a huge thing.
Yeah. Well, we and John are big with educating and being good influencers here in our community. With land surveying, it's a much needed industry, but unfortunately, surveyors in the past haven't done a good enough job of showing what we do, and for it to be as household as being a doctor or even an engineer. So we're big on educating people. When we get to dip into things such as these types of projects, this archaeological or historical, it just does bring a whole nother element to it, and it could influence a whole different type of people. Like Gypsy, I know you had mentioned your story was pretty interesting about how you got into utility locating. I remember, and from when you did it that one time, and it just resonated with you really well, and it kicked off your whole career basically as far as doing that, right?
Yeah, and I think it's really neat, the opportunities that I'm sure that come about with y'all now, certain properties that y'all are able to survey and stuff, that always leads to, because you have, how many times do you read a story? Well, there was this people that were laying a pipeline and they found this big Spanish treasure, something to that nature. And it's interesting that, even though that's what y'all do for a living, how it's expanded into treasure hunting and stuff like that. So we really do all need to connect again, and who knows, maybe we can follow some of these others now that y'all have metal detectors too.
Yeah. I think another thing to add to that too, Gypsy, that's a great point, is that the surveyors were the first boots on the ground. When they were laying the railroad, they were taking fire from the indigenous people. Yeah. So, they were, they were basically the mappers of the colonization, the whole 9 yards.
True.
So,
very important job.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And see, we have access to that type of history that we can share, and how people go in there and understand the notes of the original Louisiana purchase of what they call the PLSS breakdown. And if anybody's interested, hit us up and we can give you guys access to maps, diaries, you name it. There's a bunch of information about what it looked like and who they talked to, and how these Spanish land grants had influences in the way we look at things now. So it's very important. Surveyor has an important role in a lot
Really
of
does.
the history. So just kind of just share a little bit of that.
Yeah,
And
the
I know
survey-
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Gypsy.
I was just going to say, and I know I follow John and David on Instagram, so I may be hitting them up for some help with some maps and stuff. But it all works together. We can all work together as teams to, further this cause and help expose even more history. That's what it's really all about. Is the adventure and the history. I mean, it would be nice, if we found some treasure along the way, but it's still a fun adventure.
Yeah, it is. What's the best way, John, for people to find? Is it through the website you have that I linked below, or what's the best way to reach out to you guys?
Yeah, it's www.csticorp.com, and you'll see just about what we do with all of our technology in the built environment and everything that we talked about. So reach out to David and myself. We always answer our emails and our phone, and don't be afraid to reach out and just ask questions, because generally, we didn't know about this stuff until we asked a bunch of questions. And I think it's very important to understand is that everything that we take and learn is that you're going to go out there and start your journey. It's a hybridization of all that knowledge and all the experiences. And there's a lot of parallels and a lot of great stories that you're even going to tell us. Like, it's just, this show even inspires me more to go do more things with history and archaeology and find better tools and more technologies to go out there and promote this.
Yep. Wow. All right. Well, you know what? We're right about almost to the 2-hour mark, and I just wanted to give an opportunity. You shared some funny stories, and I really appreciate that, because it's always good to hear those. Maddie Blake cooling off in the cooler, which I'm going to have to bring that up with him the next time I talk with him. But but it's really neat that you guys have come together, and I feel like you got great things going to happen in the future between Cindy and her research, and then teaching her how to do the metal detecting as well, and the other things that are you talk about going back to the El Paso area and working together again. I want to throw out too that if the Prometheus or one of them doesn't want to pick that up, give me a call. We'll do it right here. We'll put it on the show. You guys can have all the time you need to talk about it. You won't just get your 40 minutes, or whatever it is on the show. We'll definitely do that. I'd love to hear about anything going forward that you guys may have to share. It's just fascinating, and I know that people love
Sounds
watching
great.
it, hearing about it as well. So, wow, really good
Great.
stuff.
Hey, Tom, for the record, I was super prepared for those hard questions. Okay.
All right. So I'm going to wrap it up. Anybody have any final thoughts or things they want to mention or bring up before we wrap it up?
I just want to say hi to Rigo, the restoration expert at the Pancho Villa Stash House. He worked his butt off the whole time he was there for 2 years.
He did.
And so I recognized him this past Wednesday a little bit before the premiere on the History Channel. And so he was very humble and very appreciative that we honored him for his work and all. Sometimes the construction guys don't get the recognition.
Is that him?
No, that's the owner.
That's the okay. All right. So there wasn't one of the guys that was named on the show. Okay. Sorry about that.
Mr. Rigo was off site, but he worked his butt off, making sure that everything was ready.
He worked hard.
Yeah. So, I want to give him a kudos. Rigoberto Gonzalez. He knows I got his back.
All right.
Rigo.
Yep. Well, thank you very much, all of you, for being on here. I'm sorry. Did I miss it?
No, I was just going to say I want to thank the entire team, and especially this team right here, because I know we're going to come back and talk about more great things. It's just a great opportunity to even be part of this great platform. And I would also extend a welcome to you guys to utilize my platform to create some advocacy and everything that we're doing, because it's really important. But I also want to say that, we are representatives of a greater cause. The team, the people in the background working hard for us, and we're going to go out there and we're working hard for them, and they deserve a lot of that recognition also.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all so very, very much. And as Gypsy mentioned, I know it was brought up that getting to meet such wonderful people, and that's been one of the blessings of this show that I've been able to do. is to reach out and if with the help of Linda and Jan and Tom, being able to meet such wonderful people like yourselves. And thank you so much. I'm honored that you would come on the show here with us and share your stories and talk about the show and talk about what you guys do. And I really, really appreciate it so very, very much. So thank you all for being here tonight.
Yes, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having us, and bless you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Every one of you.
Yep. So, and for those of you that were watching here tonight and those of you that will be watching down the road, again, we've linked to a lot of the information that we've talked about here tonight in the description below. And we will I'll get together with Cindy and we'll get that website or email address and stuff. We'll put that in there as well so you guys can find it. But again, thank you folks for being here with us today. And don't forget to join us again as we get together next week again on Wednesday night at 7:30 for the next exciting episode of The Curse of Oak Island. And I believe there's another Beyond. We're coming up right after that we'll be covering as well with Tom and I. So thanks very much for everybody being here. Again, Jeff Freeman with The Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream. We'll see you right here. Have a great rest of your weekend. All right. Bye-bye now.
Good night, y'all.